Room Apothecary presents. I am Natalie, and I am here today to talk to you guys about a grimoire or a book of shadows. This is a question I get from a lot of people: is how do you start one? What do you do? Does it have to be something specific or a special book? And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today and how to utilize one or set one up or begin one, or however you want to phrase it. I am kind of a particular person in terms of I had a specific image in mind of what I wanted. I knew how I wanted it to look, and I'm going to be honest with you, it didn't turn out quite the way I expected. But I'm going to show you a little bit of some different methods that I've seen other people use, and then I'm going to share mine with you and show you how I set mine up. Now, some people I want to make a distinction between a journal and a grimoire or book of shadows, because a lot of people cross the two or consider the two the same thing. I do not. For me, a journal is something in which I keep personal thoughts, reflections, and what have you. When I'm reading a new book or I'm trying to absorb certain information, I will journal in that. I'll use a journal of some sort to write down ideas that I have, cross-reference materials between this book and maybe another book I've read or something along those lines, or I'll keep personal thoughts or make little changes and things like that. And that to me is very different than my book of shadows. Some of what I journal about goes into my book of shadows, some of it does not. It's a collection of learning for me. My book of shadows is almost like a recipe book. It is a collection of all of my learning with my twist to it. What works for me and how I do it. Plus information I care to pass on to someone else who may get my book of shadows when something happens to me. I don't know, it might end up in the garbage. Who knows? But for me, it is a labor of love, and it's vastly different than journal. So let me share a little bit of what I have for you guys. This is a new one that I just got. This is a journal, and I will use this as a journal. Okay, so I've got this lovely little kind of hardbound journaling book here. This is the first time it's been out of the packaging. It's got gold leaf on the side, and it's lovely. And you could use this as a grimoire. I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't. It's got beautiful lined pages, which I love because I like lined pages, especially when I'm doing heavy-duty writing. I like the fact it has a little bookmark. And this could make a wonderful book of shadows for somebody. It is not going to be a book of shadows for me. It's going to be a journal of some sort. And I haven't decided for what yet. I actually, when I put this on my wish list, I had a reason for it. There was something I wanted a journal for. And for the life of me, I can't remember what the hell it was. So, I don't know. This is a journal that I received at Christmas time. It is a leather-bound journal. It is done in the old style of the pages being hand entered and in different sections, as you can see. So there's, this is a hand done type of book. That's the back. That's the front. Okay. So this particular book I've already dedicated to a purpose. I'm going to use this journal for the 3rd degree studies for a year and a day, and then any additional space will be used for ideas that I want to add to my grimoire. So I know that Timothy Roderick is currently working on a 3rd year book, and so this has been reserved for those studies because I like to keep my activities and my meditations and my thoughts and all of that into one place. So I have dedicated this journal to that purpose, and it will not be used until that 3rd year book comes out and I dedicate myself to the 3rd year of study. That being said, for me, these are journals. And again, some of what I put into these journals may go into my grimoire, my book of shadows. And that is what I want to show you now. I had a specific way I wanted my grimoire to look. For one thing, I wanted it to be very artsy. When you see a lot of people, their grimoire pages have this beautiful lettering with all of this lovely artwork, and it looks very old world, and that's exactly what I wanted for my grimoire. But that is not at all what I got, because I am not an artsy person. I can't draw a stick person that looks like a person, okay? So I can calligraphy, and I can write that kind of stuff when I do it, but I often don't have the time that kind of really fancy stuff requires for me to do that in my grimoire. So part of it too is that it's very time consuming to handwrite, because I wanted everything in my grimoire to be handwritten. And I kind of gave up on that idea very quickly. Technology is a fabulous thing, and sometimes it's a very useful thing. And so sometimes just taking a very long recipe or document or a picture that I saw that I liked, I could never recreate that picture. So I just printed it onto parchment paper. Now everything in my grimoire is parchment paper. That I do insist on. However, not everything is the same color of parchment paper, a fact that actually rankles my soul. So I'm going to show you, this is my grimoire. It's wooden. I bought this from, I never can remember the name of the dadgum shop, and I love their shop. They're absolutely a wonderful shop. I've mentioned them in the past. I have mentioned them when I've talked about my grimoire, and if you give me a few minutes, it may actually come back and click. But Sacred Mists, sacredmist.com. That's where I bought this. This was a birthday present to myself. And when it arrived to me with about 10 sheets of thin parchment paper that looked a bit like this. Okay, it was kind of a golden color, which I really love. And it was 2 pieces of wood and 2 long screws. That's how it came. It was not constructed. And at first I was kind of put out, because I was like, I spent money on a book. I spent $75 on this thing for 10 pieces of parchment paper and 2 pieces of wood with a couple of screws. And at first I was really, really upset. But the Triskel is what I really, really loved, and that's what I wanted. And although I do pyrography, my skills are not this adept. And I really liked the fact that it was wooden, and this is what I wanted. So I thought about it, and I realized that the reason it came to me that way is because how can a book come to you constructed when you haven't constructed the book yet? And I realized that very quickly, and I was kind of like, well, okay, you know, I see. It's so that I can put it together myself, because this is a congregation of my work and my dedication to the craft. And as you can see, there's all the multiple colors. When I asked my husband to get me parchment paper, he got me green parchment paper. It came with gold. I'm like, are you a moron? Do you not see that this is gold paper? And he had ordered me green parchment paper because to him it didn't matter. And it really bothered me that this is all on different color paper. But over time, I have come to realize, and I tried to use the different color parchment paper to mean different things. Like I tried to do just herbal things on the green paper, and some of my grimoire is handwritten and some of it is not, and as you can see, there's my pathetic attempt at artwork on the sides of the pages. It just wasn't going to work, and so I took to printing some pretty artwork onto the paper in manners that I could not do, and I'm okay with that a little. I've got other little, you know, borders and things that I liked, but I came to realize very quickly that it's not so important, because this is really about me and my learning, and this is a book for me. It's a reference book for me to go back to learn different things, remember different things and recipes that I want to recall or that worked for me, information that I may need to know. And so for me, my grimoire is more of a reference book that's kind of a bringing together of all of the different things that I have learned. Alphabets, sigils. This is a quick reference book, so when I'm creating a sigil, I go to the alphabets, and it helps me to pick something that I can use. I have different things on the elements in here. Some of these are things that I have found that people have been generous enough to share on the internet, and so I've been able to just print it out. I have a recipe for flying ointment. You know, all of these things. And some of it's very important to me that it be handwritten. And the things that are handwritten are my actual spells. Other things I just kind of printed because it made sense to print it, because it was so lengthy and long. And in that case, you know, it's things like this. So, you know, your ruling planets, and then I have a whole section on correspondences, and this takes up several pages. This would have taken me forever to write out by hand. And there may come a day when I have the time and the patience to sit down and redo all this by hand. And I might redo it. And I might redo it all on one color paper. But for now, this works for me. Oh, yes, and I stole the page from the Halliwells. Yeah. And then I also have, I loved this picture. The first rule of Witch Club, right? And I put the establishment date for my own grimoire when I actually started this grimoire. So I have things in here that just mean a lot to me personally and help me to define my path as a witch and my path in the practice of the craft. Now, some of you may be wondering, because I am a tab person, and why is this particular page tabbed? Well, I'll tell you. This particular page is a salve that I created myself for my husband, because he has a skin condition that's extremely painful for him. And my salve apparently is the only thing that really works for him. And I mean, we're talking, he's tried steroid creams and everything. And so I go back to the original recipe whenever I go to make this salve for my husband. And so in order to be able to find it quickly, I tabbed it. But I have like home protection spells. I have other people's spell work in here. And if it's something that I printed, I like to keep the source. Where did I get this from? So I will usually just print it as it is. But things that are spellcraft that are important to me, I handwrite. And as you can see, this is a spell that was sent to me by my cousin Sunshine Morning Ray. So I hand wrote this particular one because she sent it to me via messenger. And so I wanted to make sure that I had it down, but I wanted to source who it was. And so I even have like little pockets with patterns in it. So like my poppet patterns are here. So, you know, these things, I realized that this book and these things that I have in here are things that are just personal to me. And so this was actually, this one here, was actually my methodology for formulating a medicine bag, which is Native American in nature, and my ideas came from a Native American friend of mine. But I added that to my grimoire because it is still magical, and this was actually a birthday gift I made for somebody who is very dear to me. So once I completed that, I took the ideas that were given to me by my Native American friend, and I put that into my grimoire. Information on actual crystals that I put into it. And then I have other things, like this is just a little quick scrying spell that I wrote out before that I recite the spell before I do any kind of crystal scrying. And I liked this image of the crystal ball. It looks a lot like my Lucille. And so I wrote the spell into this crystal ball so that it would imbue that with that energy. So your grimoire is going to be your own collection of things that you do. Like this was a great spell that I found that I liked, and so I even kind of like the artwork with it, so I just printed it up on my parchment paper. I haven't had a chance to add it into my grimoire yet. And this is an image that I created from one of my tarot cards, but I added a sigil to it, and I actually used this in my spellcraft. So thank you, Deborah Blake. I love your deck, and this is actually a part of a spell that I have. As you can see, I created my own sigil to go with it, but I utilized this imagery because this image spoke to me. I absolutely love that deck. It's one of my favorite tarot decks. And so I use this when I'm working on that particular spell, and it's a money drawing spell in case you couldn't tell. So that to me is the difference between a grimoire and a journal. For me, my grimoire is more my actual spell work, actual things that I create, like a recipe book or a reference book for journal that I like to use. Now, to be honest with you, I don't really like the screws because I find that it's hard to open the book and hold it open. So when I'm doing a ritual and I'm trying to refer to that, I almost have to like turn the book to be able to read the pages. So what I am toying with is the idea of taking leather straps and using leather straps or some sort of cording or binding rather than these screws, and kind of running it through and tying it to make it where the book will open a little more and actually stay open when it's on a stand, because even with a stand it won't stay open. So I find that kind of frustrating. It's one of the things I don't like. So I'm kind of trying to figure out a way in which I can use cording to run it through and actually work it better to hold it and make it a little more useful for me. So that is my grimoire. Again, sacredmist.com was the website in which I received this beautiful journal, beautiful grimoire, which I absolutely love. And I do love my grimoire. It's very personal to me, and I really like it. I just didn't like the way it turned out at first. I've come to be okay with it simply because I realized that my personality is very mixed. And so this book perfectly and adequately defines who I am as a witch. Very eclectic in nature, very changing from one day to the next, and that's okay. So your journals are going to be personal to you. If you equate a journal to a grimoire, it's the same thing for you. That's fine. For me, it's not. I have a different definition. But I may take what I have in my journal and put it in my grimoire, because this is the distillation of all of my knowledge and learning. This is my exploration as a witch and my outpouring as a witch and as a practitioner of magic, and how I manifest it for myself. And so this is what's worked for me. I find that that really helps me. It's a reference book. It's a recipe book. It's all of that. It's that distillation of who I am as a witch. That's what goes into my grimoire. So I hope that this video has been a little bit useful for you guys. I know it's a topic that I've talked on before, but it's one that seems to be continuously requested by viewers. So I thought I would reprise this in a new video for you guys. And again, I appreciate your watching. I appreciate your support. Thank you so very much. Please check out my webpage at www.purplebroomapothecary.com. There's a link on my banner page. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Blessed be.